I think that Viewfinder has a great concept. Its main mechanic with the photos, its simulation setting, and its visual style are interesting. But where I think it falls short is in the design of its levels and the challenge that those levels present to the player. But why does it fall short there? First, let's define what I think makes a great puzzle game. Look at something like Portal, The Witness, and Superhot. Those are three games that I think are excellent puzzle games. And I think you need a few things to be an excellent puzzle game. First, the evolution of the mechanics need to be somewhat consistent using the IPM or Introduce, Practice, Master system, or a variant of it. Doesn't need to stick to that, but that is kind of the best way, I think, for puzzle games to function. Secondly, the game's visuals need to be somewhat memorable. Think of all the white and red for Superhot, or just the cleanness of the portals and everything from Portal. They are very memorable art styles. And the third thing is, it needs to be an evolving challenge. You need to introduce mechanics step by step and let the player discover those mechanics as they are working through the game and make them harder and harder. Viewfinder, it consistently hits one of these three criteria, but the other two are kind of hit and miss throughout the game. Let's start with what it hits. It's a visually stunning game. I love Viewfinder's art style. I think it's very visually appealing. They use a lot of bright colors to show how optimistic the scientists were when they made these worlds, but it slowly gets darker and more corrupted by the end. It's a great transition that adds to the story and change of these unseen characters and what their mental state was going through. Early on, they established the stakes and the reasons for this world to exist in the first set of levels. They also let you customize your pictures with different filters, like a warm filter and a black and white filter, so you can discern what you created with the picture from the normal environment. And it adds a lot of visual flair to the level. So visually, it's really interesting and it hits the mark for memorable visuals. Where Viewfinder sometimes hits the mark, but also sometimes misses it, is the challenge department and the evolution of its mechanics. When I look at puzzle games like Superhot, like Portal, like The Witness, I can feel a ramping up of difficulty. Even with an open worldish puzzle game like The Witness, there's a ramp up in each puzzle section. You have a mechanic that gets introduced at the beginning of the section. Then you are allowed to practice with that mechanic and work your way through using that mechanic. And you're finally faced with a large challenge at the end of the section to show your mastery of that mechanic. This is the basic IPM system that most games, especially puzzle games, use. In Viewfinder, they do a lot of introducing and practicing, but not a lot of mastering. Like in the second area, they introduce this interesting thing by lining up multiple portraits that have different pieces of the picture on there to make the way, to make an area that you can walk through and advance through the level. It's there through all of the second area, then it's in the first two sections of the third area. But then it barely shows up again. There's no payoff for a lot of the mechanics and things they introduce. Then there's the whole problem with the ending. Spoilers if you haven't played Viewfinder, I guess, even though there's not really a lot of the story in the end gameplay. A lot of it's through like these recordings, but spoilers just in case. The final level of Viewfinder is kind of a prime example of what I'm talking about when it comes to introducing mechanics and only being able to practice them maybe a little bit, but not being able to master them. You have to get through 9 different puzzles in 5 minutes. And this section introduces 2 new mechanics that have not appeared in the game at all. An actual fail timer and the ability to take photos between puzzle areas. They introduced these mechanics literally at the end of the game. The fail timer could have been introduced right away as part of the final challenge for each section to advance to the next area, not being an optional one. In the last teleporter, give the player a time challenge that uses everything they practiced in the area's levels to make a mastery area. With introducing the ability to take photos between puzzle areas, there are 3 level areas before this where you could have introduced the idea of taking pictures between puzzle levels so that the player would assume it's possible in the end section without needing the hint. Using those 3 areas before the actual ending to introduce and practice it and then mastering it in the timed area would have felt a lot better than just, oh, here's the hint, you can take pictures between the levels. I'll be honest, I don't like their ending part because they are introducing new mechanics that are nowhere else in the game. And the whole ending section just feels like it was meant to be a spike in difficulty without giving you the main information on how the section works. And I really don't like the random spikes in difficulty when it comes to puzzle games. I said before, I like it when a puzzle game ramps up its difficulty. What I mean by that is when you enter a section, it should start easy and build its way up to more complicated and harder puzzles. So there is actually like a learning curve. Viewfinder feels like it's missing that ramping difficulty. If each section, not each teleporter, but each collection of teleporters in an area, if they built on what was taught in the first teleporter of that area, gradually through those other teleporters, then I think Viewfinder's levels would be really interesting. Because right now, Viewfinder's levels are just kind of boring. They don't really change in difficulty at all. There was only one level that I found difficult, and it took me about half an hour to complete, at least, because I just could not get it correct. It was the final level in the third teleporter in the third area. Trying to line up the battery and the goal in one picture through a wall wasn't hard, but trying to find the right angle so things wouldn't fall off and I could climb to the goal, and the goal was level enough that I could actually, activate it, was the part that delayed me. That was the middle part of that section. I still had 3 or 4 teleporters to go in just that area. And after that level, I breezed through the rest. It took maybe half an hour, if that, to get through the rest. I just feel Viewfinder doesn't really pose a challenge to the player enough. Like I said, having the last teleporter be timed to add additional pressure to the player, or just making those puzzles longer and more complicated, would have at least given the player a challenge at the end of each section. So you would feel like, yes, I accomplished this section. I accomplished something in this section, not, oh, I got through it. Okay. I like Viewfinder in terms of its main mechanic with the photos, but I feel like the devs could have done more with its puzzle design and consistency of the evolution of difficulty as the player progresses through different sections of the game. And that's really all I've got to say about Viewfinder. Tell me in the comments, what are your thoughts about Viewfinder? Even if you haven't played it. If you've seen stuff on it, if you've seen like Smitty play it, what are your thoughts on the game? And if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you think I've earned it, please subscribe and have a royal day.